So I'm going to touch on, the broader trends of digitalization as a bit of a context, and then how that's impacting on program and project management as a discipline and as a kind of market. Well, the first thing is, like PPM, digitalization can mean many things to different people. When we asked CEOs a couple of years ago, what does digital mean in your context, we got literally dozens of answers. Right? And so understanding what does that mean, it can mean many things. What does that mean in your enterprise? What are the things that are most relevant that you want to focus on is part of the challenge. And organisations typically are still navigating through that. Let me give you a Gartner view around what we think some of the key kind of trends and frameworks that can help navigate this. So in this journey of digital revolution, back in 2012, we came up with this term of the Nexus of Forces. And in 2013, we sort of talked about that a lot in our conferences and with clients. And this Nexus of Forces, I know it's a bit hard to read at the back, is basically 4 mega trends that converge. So we've got social, we've got mobile, we've got information, some people call that analytics or big data, and we've got cloud computing. Each of those is big in its own right, but when they come together, you get even more powerful impact and opportunity and disruption going on. So that's what we call the Nexus of Forces. Then we started to talk about building on that. If we extend this virtual world of technology and we start to connect the Internet of Things, the physical world, we've got this concept of digital business being this meshing of the physical world and the digital world, or the virtual electronic, coming together. So digital to us is not just a channel, let's just build a mobile app for our customers, but it's actually how can we reinvent our business models and our products by taking advantage of this meshing of the physical world and the digital world. We're seeing organisations grappling with how do we balance the need for operational stability, security, serving our customers, being reliable, with the need to innovate and take advantage of some of these new opportunities. And so there's a model that I'll come back to shortly we call bimodal business that talks about needing these 2 modes to operate in parallel. Stable, reliable, incremental improvement, traditional ways we think of business, but introducing this other mode that allows us to explore some of these new and unknown areas. I'll come back to that. And then we see this moving into this era of algorithmic business. Some of our analysts talk about also autonomous business. So as we start to use technology, we can start to automate some of the transactions. If you're involved in the share market, you will already be aware there's autonomous trading going on, basically computer-generated orders for buying and selling of shares. Perhaps in a more public sense, we see the autonomous vehicles being talked about. Google's probably the most famous, but all of the car companies are doing R&D on autonomous vehicles that drive themselves and are making decisions about, what's safe and what's not safe on the road. We think that will expand into other areas and other aspects of your business, whether you're a utility, a bank, or whatever, that some aspects of business will become sort of automated. And without getting into the, robots taking over the universe, there's elements of that sort of come into there, which is quite fascinating. So that's the kind of roadmap. Basically, digital is here. It's going to continue to impact our business. It's going to continue to cause new levels of disruption, which are both opportunities and challenge. Now, with that, there's a risk of doing new things and there's a risk of not doing them. When the world was stable, or at least we assumed it was relatively stable and most things we thought were predictable, the risk of doing something tended to be higher sometimes than the risk of not doing it and waiting for someone else to work out the problem. When the world is moving faster and it's less predictable and it's more disruptive, the risk of doing nothing actually can be higher than the risk of trying some experiments and learning and building capability in new areas. So I'd encourage you to just bear that in mind in this era. It's not as simple as, oh, look, we don't understand that, let's wait for someone else to figure it out. Enterprises should be thinking about, well, how do I maybe do some experiments and start to learn and build new capabilities, but do that in a safe way. So we've got mode 1 is your traditional approach. I know people have talked about waterfall versus agile, and I'll come back to that. But typically, mode 1 will tend to use waterfall, although you can use agile type methodologies here as well. We see organisations doing that. Whereas mode 2 is exploring the unknown. And so you're typically taking iterative methods. not just agile as a big A, but agile as a small a more agile, adaptive capability in the organisation. Using design thinking, using lean startup, using methods that are basically iterative and testing out because we're not sure what the answer is. And so we're going to take small steps until we learn. That's the kind of way to do it. But rather than saying I'm going to do nothing, actually being active and making some choices around that and embracing the risk in a managed way. So we see this as a key capability that's being developed in many organisations. And so we encourage you to think about that, and we encourage you to think about that in your projects as well, because we still need discipline in this mode. In fact, we need more discipline in a sense in a mode 2 exploratory. We need more discipline to be able to cut off something that's not working and stop it, right? And try something else. So being agile actually requires more discipline. It's not saying, hey, look, just go crazy and try lots of silly things and see what works. It actually requires more discipline to be able to change and adapt and reprioritise in a dynamic way.